Good afternoon, Mark Stott with HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion for June the 15th, 2016. I've been out of town for the last few days. We were testing some equipment in the nation's midsection, our high-altitude balloon project for studying hurricanes from the eye, up through the eye, and to the edge of the atmosphere. Everything went well. I will talk about that in a future update where I can show you some of the data and some of the pictures that we got. It was really remarkable. And the testing's complete. We are now ready for launching it in the eye of a hurricane or the center of a tropical storm if need be. Either way, we are going to be ready. So let's take a look at what's going on for today. I wanted to look at the tropical cyclone heat potential map. This is the true measure of the energy in the ocean. And to simplify things, the higher up on this scale that we go, the more energy exists in the upper part of the ocean, what we call upper ocean heat content. And as you can see, there's a good deal of that in the Caribbean Sea, and especially the Western Caribbean. But even off the coast of the Carolinas here, there's a little bit of this extra energy starting to fill in parts of the Atlantic, coming out of the deep tropics into the subtropical Atlantic, and then out in the open Atlantic here, the main development region, starting to fill in a little bit. So it's getting there. Pretty much you can bet that any given year the Northwest Caribbean and the Gulf will have plenty of upper ocean heat content. But what we'd like to look for are these bullseyes of additional heat content. And there's one right here just to the north of Cuba and the Florida Straits on the west side, and a pretty warm ocean heat content here in the Bahamas and of course in the Northwest Caribbean. Nothing to be alarmed about since there's no hurricanes out there. But this is, in fact, something that we will be watching over the next several months. Looking at the La Nina that's developing, it's not officially La Nina yet, but the subsurface shows a nice area of cold, still with several gradations of this blue color, several degrees Celsius below the long-term average. And this will fluctuate a little bit from time to time. We see a positive anomaly that's popped up here, another tiny one here in the eastern side of the Pacific, and a little bit of an erosion of the cold pattern out in the central to west central Pacific in what we call the Nino 3.4 area. But all in all, everything's moving along as it's expected to be towards this gradual weak La Nina by the fall is what it looks like will happen. So no big changes here either way. The wind shear, still prevalent for the most part. You can see in this outline, this is a great product from the University of Wisconsin. Clearly the westerlies are up here to the north. They're starting to retreat more northerly, but there's still cyclonic circulation going on down into the Gulf, upper level low sitting over here, and then strong wind shear coming across the tropics, at least the western side. But then if we look at the actual contours for the shear map itself, again, an awesome product from the University of Wisconsin. Really, really like it. And of course we appreciate that it's available at no charge to show people. So look here in the eastern Atlantic, nothing really to take advantage of it right now. The air is pretty dry and stable out here, but the wind shear values are 5 to 10 knots, which is conducive for development. So we're starting to change things slowly, and we will as we get through July, obviously. But you can still see a little bit of this cyclonic negative phase of the MJO, negative in terms of development. It's not a positive part of the MJO for tropical development and uplift in the atmosphere, what we call upward motion. So there's a general overall sort of sinking motion in the atmosphere right now, downward motion, suppressing tropical convection, higher surface pressures as a result, and then still generally cyclonic flow in the Atlantic with that resulting wind shear. And that's expected this time of year. No surprises there for the most part. In the Atlantic, over the next couple of days, nothing expected to develop. There was one little blip that showed up on the radar, so to speak, down here in the Mexico, southeast Mexico area. Hurricane Center saying now this has only about a 1 in 10 shot at developing. And what would happen is this tropical wave energy coming across the Caribbean could try to develop in this region, but it looks like it'll run out of water before it does so. However, heavy rain could still spread through this region, tropical downpours, that kind of thing. Nothing really showing up in the long-term computer models either. Again, we're in the non-upward motion part of the MJO, Madden-Julian oscillation. So basically, it's not a window of opportunity for development in the near future. In the eastern Pacific, this one area well to the southwest of Mexico, going to head off to the west-northwest and northwest with time. 50% chance of developing in the next 5 days. We can look at that graphically on this map. And as you can see, it would stay well away from Mexico, really not causing a problem for them, even if it did develop. But it looks like if we read the paragraph here, this last part, over the weekend, conditions should gradually become less conducive for tropical cyclone formation. So still, the East Pacific really not producing anything, which is unusual to have the North Pacific as a whole, all the way out to the typhoon regions, not really producing any activity yet. So we'll have to see if that continues. Maybe the Atlantic will take over in August and September and become the dominant basin for accumulated cyclone energy. Fancy way of saying maybe the Atlantic will, in fact, be a lot busier than we have seen lately. Usually when the Pacific's quiet, the Atlantic basin takes over. But not always. It's not something that has to happen. Just an observation. All right, well, that's it for me for today. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. And as always, I do appreciate you tuning in. I'm Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you again tomorrow.